Hi, it's Martin and Arlo, and we're back in the studio today. We have a fair amount of bread to make, and having the extra oven capacity will help us. Today, we are going to make pain au levain, which is basically just sourdough bread in French. And Anthem does not like this bread, is that right?
No, no.
One of Anthem's favorite types of bread, sourdough bread, and the more sour, the better, right?
Very true.
Yeah, very much so. Okay. So let's do the mix. Come on over. I have, let's talk about this for a second. This is a Levain that I started yesterday. A sourdough pre-ferment. If you're new to baking and you have a sourdough culture going, you might check out the blog that I wrote called Baking with Pre-Ferments on the King Arthur Flour page. Baking with Pre-Ferments, and it talks a lot about pre-ferments and what they are and why to use them and all of that. So this is a stiff Levain, which means that it's, when you mix it, it's a dough consistency pre-ferment. It's kind of on the stiff side as opposed to a liquid pre-ferment. A liquid pre-ferment is usually equal parts water and flour. Stiff pre-ferment has less water and it's stiff. So I'm going to add this in and break it up. The water I'm using, I did a mix this morning, so I kind of know roughly what the water temperature is that I need to use. This water is in the 90s because this room is not super warm. So I warmed the water some just to make sure that I get a dough temperature, which is good. You want to break the Levain up pretty well, and the stiff ones take a little bit more work than the liquid ones. The liquid ones will sort of pour in and immediately help you work in a sort of homogeneous condition here, but the stiff, I like to get them broken down a little bit more. And we're going to need this dough some, or at least hold it quite a bit so it'll have a chance to get further incorporated. Okay, for dry ingredients I have all-purpose flour, all-purpose. I don't use a lot of bread flour. I don't even keep bread flour in the house. I mostly use all-purpose, and it works very well for bread. In fact, I prefer it for baguettes and just about everything else. And I have salt, and I also have a little bit of whole rye flour, and I'm using this King Arthur. It's called pumpernickel. And out in the marketplace, pumpernickel can sometimes refer to a fine grind like this, or sometimes it can refer to a coarser grind. I prefer a finer grind, and I like this whole rye a lot. If you don't have whole rye in this recipe, which again is called pain au levain, here it is. In this recipe, you could also substitute for the whole rye flour, you could substitute, what, whole wheat? Yeah, whole wheat, white whole wheat. You could use medium rye flour. You could use a variety of things. You could use spelt, whole spelt if you have it. So there are a lot of options. Okay. So I've got my dry ingredients. I usually just give a quick stir to combine. Maybe that's force of habit, but I do like, especially if this were a yeasted formula, and this does not have commercial yeast in it. But if it were a yeasted formula, I might be kind of cautious about that. Okay, dry into the wet. And you can use a spoon, you could use a plastic scraper. You could also do this in your mixer. No reason not to use the mixer, but I'm gonna leave this dough in this bowl to rise, and it's one less thing to clean, and I prefer to do fewer dishes. Okay, so that dough is homogeneous and there are no dry bits. There's nothing dry on the bottom of the bowl. I'm gonna let it sit for about half an hour, and then I'm gonna come back and do some turns and folds and a little bit of kneading, okay? Okay, so look here. This dough has had about half an hour. And if you feel it, get your hand wet and then feel it. And it's not really gonna feel like much is happening, right? There's really not any gas in there, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like airy yet. But look, just having that half an hour, look at the way which it'll almost window pane, right? So just having that half an hour where the flour and the water are together, it begins to develop some strength. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So now what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna knead it, sort of fold it in the bowl. I could put it out on the counter, but if I do that, what am I gonna wanna do? What do you think most people are gonna do if they put it on the counter? They're gonna add flour, right? And we don't wanna add any flour, we don't need to. The mix is, if anything, it's a little bit on the stiff side, so we don't wanna add any more flour to this. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get my hand wet, and I'm just gonna pull and start working my way around the dough. This is like a fold, right? It's kind of like a fold. It's a little bit like I'm gonna do it more than I would do a fold. A fold, I might just go around the dough one time, right?
Yeah.
Can you do that? Get your hand wet, and then pull up and press to seal. Yep, pull up and press to seal, and then turn the bowl. Press to seal, yep. And just keep working your way around. It's getting strong, right? Yeah. We probably don't need to do much more than that. Good. Let me see how it feels real quickly.
Really stiff.
Yeah, no, it feels good. I don't think we need to do much more. Yep. And then I'll just turn it. And we'll come back after 1 hour and we'll give it a fold, and then it'll get 1 additional hour. So 2.5 hours, or you could go, like I said earlier, you could go longer than that. We are ready to divide. This dough, so the recipe gives this dough 2.5 hours of bulk. So you do the mix, you let it rest for 30 minutes, you come back and do a little bit of kneading, and then it gets 60 minutes and a fold and another 60 minutes. It's all on the recipe. Oh, thanks, bud. So I gave this dough actually 3 full hours. I gave it 3 full hours. The house was cool this morning, the dough looked like it needed it, and as I've said many, many times, I usually say that people in the home environment don't have as much fermentation as they might have. There's nothing, this dough will be fine. It could have another hour and it would still be fine. We're not gonna hurt anything by fermenting this really nicely. In fact, we're just going to improve flavor. And let's do this. About 700. These are gonna be fish. How does that feel? Feels like a nice dough, right?
Yeah, totally. A bit smaller?
Yeah, those, and then I've got 3 smaller ones. Good job. Why don't you watch one this way, and then maybe I'll have you swing around and watch over my shoulder once too, okay? So buddy, will you come around here on this side so she can slide in? Okay, so I'm going to do a batard. So I fold down. There are a lot of ways to shape a batard, but with this dough, which is, I would say, on this firmer sort of side of things, I think this method works well. So I came down from the head. I bring in what I would call like the shoulders. Bring the head down again. Tuck those guys. And then tension it a little bit. And I've got the seam here. You can see it. And I like things, you can put things seam up or seam down. There are a lot of reasons for either orientation. I like seam up because the couche is floured and it gives a nice aspect when you invert the loaf and score it, because you have sort of a floury and then scored contrast line, which looks really pretty. So that's what I'm gonna do. Okay. You come around here now, and let's you and I do some. Pat it a little bit, maybe just a little bit longer. We'll give you some more. And if you feel like it's sticky at all, just remember that trick. Go up there and grab some flour, bring it back.
Yep.
Go up there, grab some flour, bring it back. You don't want to work with flour in your work surface, you want it near your work surface, right?
Yep.
So bring it down.
Halfway?
Yeah, halfway, a little over halfway. Maybe almost like 2/3 actually. Yep. And then remember this whole thing where we work with our hands as paddles, no magic fingers. If you, again, watch the shaping video, you'll see it. Okay.
And you bring the shoulders in.
And you bring the shoulders in. You should just do this by yourself. You don't need me.
Yes, I do.
You don't need your old dad.
And then you can bring these in?
Bring the top down first.
Okay.
Remember, fingers as paddles. Yep, like that. And now bring those sides in.
Just like that?
Yep, see how I'm gonna do right here?
Yep.
Doop.
And
And forward. Yep. And so now we have this kind of thing like that. Does it feel like it's sticking at all, or you feel like you're okay?
I'm okay.
Feel like you're okay? So now what I'm gonna do, I feel like I'm just a little bit sticky, so I might even just grab a little bit. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a little bit of tension. And this is the part that I think takes the longest to learn, is how to apply that tension to a batard. It's almost like I hold it in place and press. Let me finish mine, and then I'll see if I can help a little bit there.
So you go like this, and then you...
Yep, so I'm right here. I'm gonna take it for just a second. And I'm gonna try and hold it in place right here, almost like this. You see how that's stretching right here?
Yeah.
See, and then I'll come back. And if it's sticking a little bit, that's okay. And actually, I think you're pretty much there. Give it a little bit of taper now. I'm gonna give you some flour. Give it a little bit of taper now, and then I'm gonna have you do another one. That was a quick 2 minutes.
Like...
Okay. Good, okay, put it on your cushion, you're ready to go. Arlo. Looks good. Anthem, you're jealous, aren't you? You want to do some shaping, right?
Maybe.
You shaped some rolls last night. Anthem shaped some brioche rounds for me last night, some little rolls, and they looked pretty darn good. I was like, man. Okay, so we have some doughs that are ready to load. I mixed this dough yesterday in the evening and shaped it, and then I put it in the fridge overnight. That's another option which you'll see listed in the recipe instructions, is after you've shaped your dough, you can put it to bed overnight in the fridge, right? And then you can get up the next day and you can bake it. It's a great way to make bread fit into your lifestyle. It's also a great way to make delicious bread. It'll make it a little bit more sour and a little bit more flavorful. So it's a good way to do it. So I took these out of the fridge and I actually let them come up to temperature a little bit. I let them warm some. When I checked them this morning in the fridge, I thought, man, they feel still a little bit young. So I pulled them and I let them come up to temperature for about 45 minutes or so before we load. So just gonna invert them. This is called a banneton, and I like the banneton with a liner. The liner is removable and it helps keep the dough from sticking. You wanna turn that one out? See if you can put it like right there.
Okay. So
just go for it. You don't have to be quick. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And look what happens. Big deal. It's okay. No problem. You can just move it. They're pretty. One of the advantages to having a dough which is cold is that it has this sort of, do you feel it has kind of the skin a little bit?
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit, yeah, like you can handle it and it will be okay because it's cold. It makes it a little bit better. Okay. So we could, as with a lot of things, we could spend a day or two talking about scoring. There are so many things to discuss. But I'll briefly say, or I'll try to briefly say, that scoring should first and foremost be functional. It should be functional. So don't try and draw the Mona Lisa with a razor. Just start with functional scores, which release the loaf. They help the loaf to grow to its maximum volume, because when the loaf grows to maximum volume in a steamy environment, go back and watch the baguette video if you haven't seen it. I talk about steam a little bit. In a steamy environment, the loaf, when it hits the stone, will expand. With moisture, it'll expand fully, and with a good score, it will expand fully. So scoring is important, right? Okay, good. You can use a razor. You can use a sharp knife, but I think razor is a far better tool. But if all you have is a sharp knife, you can use that. You can also use a pair of scissors and cut about a 1/2 inch into the surface of the dough, forming a cross pattern or something like that. Okay, so I'm gonna have you score one. Actually, I'm gonna get this one out too. Let me turn this thing over. So this batch makes 1,400 grams. Is that right? Yeah, 1,400 grams, just over 1,400 grams. So it's 2 loaves, which are just a little bit over 700 grams. Or I just made one big one too. So I made a double batch last night and I took half of it. I made this monster. Did you call it a monster or something? What did you say? You were like, that thing is huge. Yeah, it's big, but it's sort of like miche size. And I like the miche. I like the way big bread bakes. And I just put it in a glass bowl. I don't have any fancy banneton this size. So I just put it in a glass bowl and I lined the bowl with a little bit of baker's linen. You could also do it with a tea towel as long as it has a nice close tight weave. And then I gently peel it off. It's a nice loaf. It feels good, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that I would say about using the baker's linen is sometimes in the places where the linen creased a little bit, you get a little bit of malformation. You get these little things, but yeah, like right there, exactly. But it's okay. It's gonna be a nice loaf still. This is a relatively firm dough. So if you feel like you're mixing and you want to add a little bit of water, you could certainly do that. Okay, so we'll score that guy in a second. I'm going to score one of these and then I'm going to have you score the other one, okay? Does that sound good? And just like with the baguettes and with some other things, I encourage you to believe that you're good at it. Just believe that you are good at it. Take that leap of faith and say, I'm good at this, look at me. Because it will help you to act with some confidence. And with delicate movements like this, you know, I think it can help you actually. So I'm gonna make just a line that goes like this and then a line like that. So I'm gonna go one straight this way and one straight this way, almost like north-south and east-west. So north-south and east-west. There we go. And if you want to add a little extra mark, that's okay. You don't have to. And that's about, I'm gonna say it's just shy of 1/2 inch deep. Okay, so do you remember how we just used the nicked edge, just the edge of that? So we don't try and cut with the flat blade, we cut with the tip, and it's almost like you draw across. Point your finger for me for 1 second, just point it out. So sometimes what I do is I say, okay, this is where I'm going to cut, and this is where I'm going to cut. See how that works? Now you do the same thing with that. And you can hold it with some firmness and make sure the blade is straight up and down. For this type of cut, just a blade straight up and down. Okay.
Like that?
Yeah, do it like this though. Hold the blade so it's curved away from you like that. Yep. And I'm gonna hold the paper so it doesn't slide.
No,
it's okay, it's okay, keep going. We'll go back if we need to, that's good. And now go from the other side, yep.
Definitely not my
That's okay.
best.
Now look, if that happens and you don't quite get through, it's okay. Just go back and make sure that you're there and make sure that the cuts intersect, and they do. And like that. I cleaned it up just a titch, but it's okay. And then you just go back if you want to have something else. So this is a very functional score and will help the loaf to release well. So let's leave that there for just a second and I'll see if I can. This feels good. What should we do here? We could just do a square, but I think, yeah, let's do a box. So cross and cross. So I'm sort of cutting from the 4 points of the compass. And this blade's wanting to drag a little bit. It might not be the sharpest ever, but I think it's gonna be okay. And then let's do something here. Now it may look like, ooh, that fell just a little bit. It did just slightly, but I promise you, as soon as it hits the oven, it's gonna really explode. So, put your blade away. And which one's going where? Let's put this guy here. steam the oven. And we'll steam that one. Okay, when you're pouring the water in, beware of the glass of the oven. If you haven't done it before, sometimes I advise a lot of caution. You can burn yourself, you can also break your oven, so be careful. One thing you can do is put a piece of cloth down to protect the glass. That way if any water hits it, it's less likely to break. I've done that a lot of times, so I'm confident doing it as I do it. If you're new to it, take your time, think through it, make sure you're being safe. Okay. Let's see, we're about to move to the next thing, so let's get our stuff together. Also looking good, but not done. You see how it's white here and still sort of blondish tan. It's golden, but it's not the deep color that I want. I want this sort of deep crust color that's down here, at least that, if not more. So I think we've got at least another 8 or 9 minutes, and then we'll check them again. Okay. All right, so we have our loaves out of the oven, and we want to eat some, right? We want to try some.
Totally. I'm so excited. It smells so good.
I think these could take even more bake. It's a little bit blonde here, but the crust is firm, and they're well colored on all sides. So I think they're good and done. They have a little bit of fermentation bubbles on the outside, and that's an indication that they were cold fermented or they were put into the refrigerator overnight. It's a telltale sign of something that's been cold fermented. This one has good color, and the scores are pretty good. The crust feels firm. It feels light for its size. They have some crunch if I squeeze them. So let's see what we got here. Yeah, it's a nice, open, light, very airy.
It smells really good.
And, yeah, super light. Let's try it. You want this one or the crust? I like the crust piece, man. There you go. Which one do you want, Anthony?
I will take whichever.
Crust girl. So, Martin and Arlo and Anthem too, making some pain au levain, a great daily sourdough bread. Thanks for joining us, and be well. Cheers.
Good crust.
Super good crust. A little bit sour, right? Actually quite a bit of acidity, but in a really nice way. I like the stiff Levain. The effect of the stiff Levain is super delicious. Awesome. Thank you so much.